A couple of things. I mean, obviously, the big one was the drone strikes over the weekend, where Ukraine launched strikes on Russia's strategic air forces deep within Russian territory. It was a shocking development over the weekend. And then, obviously, the U.S. has really been pushing Russia to agree to an unconditional ceasefire in Ukraine. It's a pretty extraordinary post on social media by the president in one way, because he seems to be granting credence to the Russian argument that they can't agree to a ceasefire at the moment and will have to respond to the Ukrainian attacks. And then he also goes on to say that Russia has offered its help on the Iran nuclear issue. So the president is speaking to Putin very much as an equal, seems like almost as a partner. So really underscores and will fuel a lot of criticism from some of the president's critics, certainly on the left, who say that he's willing to give President Putin essentially the benefit of the doubt over Ukraine.
Right. I'm just kind of reading this social media post and quoting here from Trump. President Putin did say, and very strongly, he will have to respond to the recent attack on the airfields. What exactly is Trump kind of insinuating here? What would that kind of response look like, or do we not know?
Well, I mean, one of the big dynamic, the context here is that the president has said previously that he wants a ceasefire immediately in Ukraine. He wants to stop the fighting, and he wants a ceasefire to pave the way for a peace deal. Ukraine has said repeatedly, okay, it's on board with that idea. And then at the same time, the president has criticized Russia in the past for launching continued strikes on Ukraine. So the president has, in the background, gotten a little bit more impatient with Russia for not agreeing to that ceasefire. But then what you see him doing here is saying essentially green lighting the idea that Russia has every right to respond and that there will be no ceasefire. I think he also says in that tweet that it's not looking good for peace at the moment. So you have a very contradictory statement from the president, where on the one hand he's pushing for a ceasefire, but then essentially standing out of the way as a major U.S. adversary. Russia says it's going to launch new strikes on a putative U.S. ally, Ukraine.
Nick, in the minute we have left, I'd love to ask you about dialogue between two other parties, the United States and Ukraine. I'm curious, was the U.S. caught unawares by this attack by Ukraine on Russia? And how much conversation is there among those two nations about the path forward here?
Well, I mean, that's certainly been strained. As far as we understand from the administration, they were not tipped off by the Ukrainians about this attack. I mean, I don't think that would necessarily be a huge surprise. It's not clear to me that the Biden administration would have been tipped off on it. I think regardless who the U.S. president was, Ukraine has shown an occasional willingness to seek forgiveness rather than permission in some of its strikes on Russian territory. Joe Biden also came out against some of those and said that they would lead to an escalatory spiral. So not a huge surprise there, but it does raise bigger questions, because while the U.S. has not been re-upping its military aid to Ukraine, it has been willing to continue to supply Ukraine with a lot of intelligence, satellite data, and things like that to help it fight the Russians. So when you see a tweet like this from the president, it really does open up the possibility that sort of everything's on the table. And, you know, the real question is what President Trump does with Ukraine right now. There are Ukrainian officials in D.C. at this moment meeting with Marco Rubio and other administration officials. So really trying to figure out at this moment what they're telling them.